The silence after laughter. The Galactic Council chamber had heard a million speeches and forgotten all of them. It was a vast amphitheater of stone and light, carved from an asteroid older than most member species' recorded history. Delegates floated, perched, coiled, or stood at assigned plinths, each surrounded by holographic sigils of rank and authority. At the center hung the council seal, slowly rotating, a symbol of unity that had never truly meant equality. Today's agenda was routine: border tariffs, trade quotas, resource allocations, and, near the bottom of the list, a minor item labeled Human Delegation Conduct Review. The laughter started when the motion was read aloud. They are requesting another adjustment to transit taxes, clicked Councillor Threx of the Card Dominion, his mandibles flexing in amusement. Again, of course they are, replied a floating elder from the Lyrity Concord, her voice smooth with practiced condescension. Humans always confuse persistence with leverage. Several delegates emitted their species' equivalent of chuckles. Even those who did not laugh watched with indulgent disinterest. Humanity was familiar now, loud, energetic, endlessly adaptable, and permanently junior. Councillor Vesh, chairing the session, tapped the resonance chime for order. The human representative is absent, he noted, scanning the plinth marked with a simple blue-white sigil. Has their delegation notified us of a delay? A pause. No transmission received, replied an aide. Nor explanation. Vesh frowned slightly, then dismissed it. Proceed without them. The motion passed easily. Increased tariffs on human shipping lanes. Temporary, of course. Always temporary. No one bothered to ask how many times temporary had already been extended. As the session continued, fragments of humanity's recent history flickered through the chamber's shared data stream. Background context, largely ignored. Human colonies established along volatile borders. Human fleets assigned patrols others deemed inefficient. Human engineers contracted for long-haul infrastructure projects no one else wanted. They were good at difficult things. Too good, which made it easy to give them more. Next item, Vesh intoned. Human petition for expanded representation. Again denied under the Cultural Maturity Clause. This time, the laughter was louder. A junior observer species, a molluscoid with translucent skin, hesitated before speaking. Honored counselors, it ventured softly, the humans have complied with every prerequisite. Their population, economic output, and their temperament, interrupted Threx. Still volatile, emotional. They form attachments too easily. Besides, added another delegate, they seem content enough doing the work. The chamber agreed. The seal rotated. Somewhere far from the chamber, the last human ambassador closed an office door and did not lock it. The first sign of something wrong arrived 3 cycles later. A trade hub on the Kesserin route reported no incoming human cargo ships. At first, it was blamed on clerical error. Human logistics were famously complex, routes overlapping, schedules flexible to the point of chaos. Then another hub reported the same thing. Then another. By the time the council reconvened, a thin thread of unease had crept into the chamber. Status report, Vesh demanded. All human commercial traffic has halted, said the aide. No distress calls. No accidents logged. Threx snorted. A labor dispute, perhaps. Or a negotiating tactic. The Lyrity elder said dismissively. They'll resume once the tariffs bite. But as reports continued to arrive, the chamber grew quieter. Human embassies across council space had closed. Not abandoned, closed. Facilities powered down in orderly sequences. Archives encrypted. Doors sealed with legal transfer notices. Human colonies went dark, not catastrophically, but cleanly. Power grids shut off in stages. Atmosphere processors placed into long-term preservation mode. On one world, a council inspection team found a hospital fully stocked, lights dimmed, beds neatly made. No bodies, no damage, just absence. This is impossible, murmured a delegate. Evacuating populations at this scale would take decades. The aide hesitated before answering. Preliminary data suggests the preparations began decades ago. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Vesh felt something cold settle into his core. You were saying they planned this? Yes, counselor. Another delegate leaned forward. Planned what exactly? The aide swallowed. Departure. Someone laughed then, sharp, brittle. Departure to where? Humans don't possess the capacity for extragalactic travel. No confirmed destinations, the aide replied. But their research divisions were not as limited as we believed. For the first time in living memory, the council did not immediately speak. The human plinth sat empty, its sigil dimmed. No protest banner, no angry broadcast, no farewell message. Just a space where voices used to argue, bargain, and insist they belonged. Vesh broke the silence quietly. Issue a recall. Full diplomatic priority. The aides shook their head. We've tried. All channels are inactive. A junior analyst, voice barely steady, added one final report. All human traffic has ceased, they said. Everywhere. At once. The seal continued its slow rotation, uncaring. And in the space between one heartbeat and the next, the Galactic Council began to understand something it should have realized long ago. Humans had not left in anger. They had left in agreement. Empty worlds, locked doors. The first Council investigation fleet arrived at Helios 9 to find the orbit pristine and silent. No debris, no distress beacons, no desperate last transmissions cluttering the comm bands. The planet rotated below them, blue oceans intact, continents laced with city grids that still glittered faintly in the night, running on emergency reserves that had not yet fully shut down. Atmosphere stable, reported the sensor officer. No signs of recent conflict. Counselor Threx watched the world through the viewport, mandibles tight. Then where are they? Shuttles descended unchallenged. Automated traffic systems recognized the council signatures and opened landing corridors without resistance. It was as if the planet itself had been waiting. The city was immaculate. Streets were clean. Transit rails stood idle but powered. Advertisements flickered softly, looping outdated messages, welcoming travelers who would never arrive. In one plaza, a maintenance drone rolled in slow, purposeless circles, its task long completed. No signs of panic, no hurried abandonment, just completion. The ground team moved through a residential district. Doors were closed, not forced. Homes were empty but lived in. Tables set and cleared, plants watered, personal items packed with deliberate care. In one dwelling, a data pad still rested on a shelf, its final entry dated years earlier. Departure Phase 3 complete. Community relocated. A junior officer whispered they left in stages. Yes, replied the mission lead. And they finished. At the city's central hospital, the doors slid open to reveal rows of pristine rooms. Beds were made, supplies labeled and organized. The emergency ward stood ready for patients who would never come. On a wall in the pediatric wing, someone had left a drawing. Crude figures, humans and aliens, standing together beneath a bright star. Written beneath it in careful script were the words, "We tried." No one spoke for a long time. As more fleets fanned out across former human space, the pattern repeated. Agricultural worlds with harvests stored and preserved. Industrial hubs mothballed with shutdown protocols rivaling military facilities. Shipyards empty, their docks spotless, construction arms folded like resting limbs. Human worlds were not abandoned. They were archived. Back in the council chamber, the mood shifted from confusion to unease. How do we miss this? Demanded Counselor Vesh. We didn't look, replied the archivist quietly. Human development data was deprioritized. Trade began to suffer almost immediately. Supply chains frayed where human carriers once bridged unprofitable distances. Emergency repair requests went unanswered. Entire border systems reported increasing pirate activity. Routes humans had patrolled without complaint now lay exposed. They were only contractors, Threx insisted, though his tone lacked conviction. Contractors who held together half our logistics web, the archivist countered. They accepted terms no other species would. Because they were patient, Vesh thought. Because they wanted to belong. The council ordered a deeper analysis of human records. What emerged was deeply unsettling. For decades, humanity had quietly rerouted resources, established independent manufacturing beyond council oversight, developed propulsion research flagged as theoretical and therefore ignored. They never violated council law, the analyst reported. They just stopped relying on us. A transmission interruption cut through the chamber, an alert from the frontier. A minor coalition world was under attack by the Karth swarm, a species long deterred by human rapid response fleets. Requests for assistance echoed across the network. Silence answered them. No human ships, the defense coordinator said, voice strained. They're not responding. Vesh clenched his hands. Dispatch council forces. They're days away, came the reply. The humans used to be ours. The chamber watched helplessly as live feeds showed evacuations failing, defenses collapsing. The swarm advanced unchecked, faster than predicted. For the first time, the council felt the weight of human absence not as an abstraction, but as loss. Attempts at contact intensified. Old diplomatic frequencies, trade coordination channels, even civilian emergency bands once shared freely with human operators. Nothing. Then, from a long-neglected relay station at the edge of human space, a signal was recovered. Weak, delayed by years of drift. It was not a call for help. It was a log. A human voice, calm and steady, filled the chamber. We prepared for this possibility, it said. Not because we wanted to leave, but because we knew one day we might have to. Images accompanied the message, communities voting, families relocating, fleets assembling in silence. We asked for partnership, the voice continued. We were told to wait, so we planned instead. The message ended with coordinates, dead space now empty. No destination, no return vector. The council sat in stunned quiet. They didn't just leave, Vesh said slowly. They removed themselves from our equations. Outside the chamber, another system went dark. And for the first time, the galaxy began to feel how much of its weight humanity had been carrying, without ever being thanked for it. The cost of absence. The galaxy did not collapse all at once. It unraveled. At first, the failures were localized, trade convoys delayed, patrol gaps widened, arbitration requests unanswered. The council labeled them temporary disruptions, confident that existing systems would adapt. They did not. Piracy surged along corridors once quietly secured by human fleets. Not the crude raiders of past eras, but organized syndicates that had learned to fear only one thing. And that fear was gone. Insurance networks failed. Merchant houses withdrew. Entire routes were abandoned as unprofitable and unsafe. On the borders, long-dormant hostilities reignited. Species that had accepted human mediation, grudgingly, often mockingly, found themselves without a neutral voice willing to stand between old enemies. Human diplomats had been patient, relentless, and strangely effective. They listened. They remembered names. They stayed in rooms long after others walked away. Now the rooms were empty. Council defense forces tried to compensate, but they were built for declarations and mobilizations, not constant presence. Humans had been there all the time, watching, responding, fixing small problems before they became wars. The small problems were no longer small. A frontier alliance fractured after its third, uncontained skirmish. Another turned inward, sealing borders and hoarding resources. Refugee flows overwhelmed systems that had once relied on human logistics crews to move populations quietly and efficiently. In the council chamber, the tone shifted from irritation to anxiety. Casualty projections? Counselor Vesh asked. Rising exponentially, replied the strategist. Conflicts humans once suppressed are compounding. Freck said nothing. His mandibles clicked softly, a sign of stress among his kind. The council turned, at last, to its archives. What they found was devastating. Record after record showed human petitions, carefully worded, endlessly revised. Requests for shared governance in frontier zones. proposals for joint patrol frameworks, warnings about emerging threats, backed by data no one bothered to review. Each was marked with the same notation: deferred. They tried, the archivist said quietly. Repeatedly. And we ignored them, Vesh replied. They didn't threaten us, another delegate muttered. That was their mistake. No, Vesh said. That was ours. The council authorized full-spectrum contact attempts. Not demands. Not negotiations. Apologies. Broadcasts went out across all known human frequencies. Statements acknowledging past failures. Offers of restitution, of shared authority, of seats long denied. The responses never came. Then, from a deep space relay thought long dead, a single message surfaced. It was short, text only. We wish to belong. We learned instead how to leave. The chamber absorbed the words in silence. They're still listening, Threx said slowly. Somewhere. Or they recorded that message years ago, Vesh replied. For this moment, the difference was academic. Desperation grew. Without human engineers, megastructures degraded faster than projected. Emergency repairs took weeks instead of hours. Systems once considered stable began to fail catastrophically when no one showed up to do the dangerous, thankless work. A stellar containment ring fractured in the OREL system. Humans would have been first on site. This time, no one was. The resulting evacuation cost millions of lives. The council declared a state of existential emergency. And at long last, they voted. The Cultural Maturity Clause was repealed unanimously. Humanity was granted full council membership, retroactive recognition, and reparations beyond precedent. A ceremonial seat was prepared. It remained empty. Cycles passed. Then years. The galaxy grew quieter, not peaceful, but wary. Smaller, afraid to extend itself. Children of multiple species grew up without ever meeting a human. They learned of them through cautionary lessons and fragmented recordings. The ones who had known them remembered something else. Humans had smiled easily. They had complained, yes, but they stayed. They helped. They volunteered. They had waited. Until they stopped. In a closed session, Vesh addressed the remaining counselors, his voice heavy with age. We mistook patience for weakness, he said. We mistook service for submission. Outside the chamber, another request for aid went unanswered. And across the galaxy, a truth finally settled into place. Humanity had not been a junior partner. They had been the quiet foundation. And now, without them, the structure of galactic civilization was beginning to crack. When the door never reopens, the anomaly appeared beyond the outer spiral, where charts thinned and certainty ended. At first, it was cataloged as a sensor error, a gravitational distortion too precise to be natural, too stable to be dangerous. When 3 independent observatories confirmed it, the Council ordered a full-spectrum analysis. What they found defied every known model. Space folded inward, not violently, but elegantly, forming a vast geometric aperture suspended in the void. Energy flowed through it in harmonized waves, controlled and deliberate. It was not a weapon. It was an invitation, or a farewell. Counselor Vesh stood alone in the observation chamber as the first transmission began to propagate across all frequencies, all languages, all protocols, ancient and modern alike. The voice was human, not synthetic, not distorted, calm, familiar, tired, in a way no algorithm could replicate. Galactic Council, it said, we acknowledge your attempts at contact. Around the galaxy, billions listened. We did not leave in anger. We left in recognition. Images accompanied the words. Human worlds reborn elsewhere. Stars unlike any cataloged. Structures grown rather than built. Human children played beside beings of unfamiliar forms, laughing without fear. We discovered something beyond your borders, the voice continued. Not a refuge, but a community. The council chamber filled silently as the message unfolded. They did not ask what we were worth, the human said. They asked what we could build together. A pause. We carried your trade, your borders, your emergencies. We did it because we believed contribution would earn belonging. The image shifted. Human ships holding lines against impossible odds, evacuation corridors lit by their hulls, engineers working until collapse. It did not. No accusation, no bitterness, just fact. We will not return, the voice said gently. Not because we cannot, but because we will not ask again. A ripple of grief moved through the chamber. Some delegates lowered themselves in gestures of mourning. Others stood frozen, as if struck. We leave you knowledge, the human continued. Our navigational theories, our disaster response frameworks, our mediation archives. Data poured into the Council's systems, vast, precise, and irrevocably final. This is not punishment, the voice said. It is closure. The aperture began to contract. Vesh stepped forward, his voice breaking through protocol. Wait, he said. Please. For the first time, the transmission responded in real time. We are listening, the human replied. We were wrong, Vesh said. We see that now. The human voice softened. Seeing is not the same as changing. We hope you do. The gate shrank further, its edges glowing with impossible light. Will we ever see you again? Someone asked, quiet, desperate. There was a pause. Perhaps, the human said, if we meet as equals. Not petitioners, not tools. The aperture collapsed into a single point and vanished. Silence returned to the galaxy. Centuries later, historians would argue about the moment everything changed. Some would claim it was the day humanity left. Others, the day the gate closed. Vesh would not live to see the long aftermath, but his final directive reshaped the Council. Borders were redrawn with consent, not force. Patrol duties were shared, not outsourced. Mediation became a responsibility, not a favor. Slowly, painfully, the galaxy learned. Human systems were studied with reverence. Their philosophies taught in academies as warnings and aspirations. Children learned a new proverb, translated across 1,000 tongues. Beware the ones who carry the weight quietly. They may one day set it down. In the deep dark beyond known space, humanity thrived. Not as conquerors, not as servants, but as partners among those who chose them freely. They did not look back often. There was nothing left to regret. And in the quiet halls of the Galactic Council, one seat remained unfilled, preserved not as an invitation, but as a reminder that the greatest power humanity ever wielded was not the ability to destroy the galaxy, but the strength to leave it behind.